This video shows how to set up objects for the bottom panel in ProsperVue. The bottom panel in ProsperVue can show up to 5 tabs or up to 5 objects. You can choose standard objects or custom objects. And when they're opened, you can see that users have access to completely customizable fields in this bottom panel. In addition, the left panel will show the same fields. So let's look at how to make these fields available to your users. In ProsperVue settings, you go to the configure page and you have a profile group to assign to the object. We have a separate video that shows how to set up profile groups, but the purpose of that is if you want to show different information to different Salesforce users, you use the profile groups for that. So that's something else to think about. Will you want different users in your organization to see different fields here and different objects in tabs? You can set them up as different profile groups. So to set up the objects for those tabs, you set them up in this object settings area. We have accounts and leads set up. You can also assign, contacts is one that's commonly used. So let's go ahead and set that up now and walk through that. If you want to geocode the address fields for contacts, you can either use the parent that the contact is associated with, or you can select different fields. Very often it's a shipping address or a mailing address or a billing address. We'll use parent for now because it should pull from the account. Each time you make a change, there is a save button at the bottom, so be sure you save. Something I will confess that I often forget to do for many things. For GDPR and privacy, if you're subject to GDPR laws or California privacy laws for consumer data, you can choose which fields to mask here. And what that will do is the data will still be in your database, but perhaps you want to mask the phone number here or any other data that should not be visible to users. You can mask that information by selecting those fields here. You can select actions that your users can take. So what those are, they'll show up here in the left panel, and when you mouse over a pin, they will show up on this pop-up card. And you can see directions to the location. You can log an event, such as an appointment, which is great if you have SDRs who are calling for appointment setting. Your users can, in one click on the Google icon, and Google will pop up and search for Anderson Auto Body. And if it's a contact, it will search for the contact name combined with the company or account name. Same with LinkedIn. In one click, it will automatically search LinkedIn for either the account name, the company name, or it will search for the person and their job title and their company name. They can log a phone call. We'll talk about related records in a separate video, but that will connect records together that are related in a corporate hierarchy. And you can log a task. And in addition, another one that I don't have set up is change owner. So you can set a task where the owner of the object, such as leads or accounts, can be changed. This might be something that you don't want to give access to for all users. Perhaps you want to give it only to sales managers. So again, that's something to think about with profiles. So you can set a profile group where you give additional powers to them. So for contacts, let's say we want to find them on LinkedIn and Google. Maybe we want to be able to log calls with them. You can also edit the record. So editing records means that you can click and you can edit these fields. Maybe we want to see their weather so that when we call them, it's an icebreaker to chat about the weather. So we'll select those. Now, related records is where you use a common key to link records that are related. And one way records can be related is if there's corporate hierarchy, such as a parent company and its subsidiaries, or all retail locations of an account, all franchise locations of an account, things like that. So you could think about, depending on your organization and how you'll use your data, you want to be able to see all those records mapped out. And even what it will do is visually show companies that you might not even, based on their names, know they're related. They could have entirely different names, but be under the same corporate structure, hierarchy. It can link all of those together. So you would need to do that if you're going to make this related records icon visible. Otherwise, we'd suggest don't put the related records icon there until you have that data connected. So here's where we can select the fields that will show up in the bottom panel and in which order they appear. And because I'm talking on video right now, I'm just going to make a quick selection of a few things. You know, things like contact ID, maybe you need those in the background in your database, but really think about, you can usually only see about 5 or 6 fields here, depending on how long they are. Think about what you want your users to be looking at. If IDs are important on an ongoing basis to see and prioritize here, by all means put them in. But if they're not important, you don't have to select those. I might not have department populated, but you know, for a contact, maybe you want department there. You could do, I would say, don't do first name and full name and last name. Maybe choose one or the other. Otherwise, this whole entire view is going to be full of names. But if you have questions about how these are populated, which ones are populated, then certainly throw them in there and we'll see what shows up. So this is kind of an iterative process. Maybe lead source, if I don't know if that's populated, but that might be important. You might not want the entire mailing address, but you might want to see where the contact is located. So obviously your fields may differ from this. So you can also put these in an order. And that is what you can do with these here. So say I want to see names first. Let's move those up. And the order obviously starts here. So what you put at the top of the list is the first field you will see. Oh, I just thought of something else to show you. Email. Let's throw email in here. And then account name, let's choose some kind of an order that makes sense. Department, phone, city, job title. Okay, let's save that before we go further. Now, top 10 fields. Top 10 is this icon here. What this does, so let's try it for account type, is it will color code the pins on the map. Let me zoom into the Chicago area here. I have so many pins, it's a little difficult to see. They did change there. Yeah, I will hide leads so we can see them. So I chose the top 10 to color code the pins for accounts. And that's what it did. It took all those accounts and color coded them according to account type. And this is useful if your users, say you're traveling to the Chicago area and maybe you want to meet with prospects only. You can toggle pins on and off here, and that way you would be able to see only prospects on the map and hide all others. So when you're thinking about top 10 and for which fields to set it, think about the data that you're making visible to your users and how they're going to use that data. You can also layer the top 10 icons. So say I want to see in this area customers, and I want to see only customers who maybe their subscription status is nearing the end of the contract. So I can choose customers, and then I can make a choice based on subscription status. So here I can now see distributed in the area where I will be traveling for a meeting. I can choose customers who are nearing the end, maybe 30 days is really close, but 90 days before their subscription is maybe both of those. I can see them on the map, see where they're located, and prioritize to meet with them. You can also sort them by annual contract values, maybe those that are nearing the end of their subscription with their bigger annual contract value. I want to prioritize those. So this is an example of how you can use ProsperVue to visualize data. Imagine these kinds of use cases and what kinds of fields you might want to use for top 10 to help that kind of decision making. So this is where you could set top 10 fields. Probably for contacts that won't be useful for too many of these, perhaps lead source, but I think I already showed you a really good way of using those top 10 intelligence. Also, top 10 will not work for fields that have an infinite number of values, such as annual contract value. This could have, if you have 1 million data points, 1 million records, it could have 1 million different numbers for every record. So that's not going to work for being able to organize them into pins. So there is an intelligence behind the scenes with ProsperVue that it wouldn't show that field to you as a possibility to do top 10 with. Obviously, things like email, it's not super useful for that either. Summary field. Summary field, well, I have not chosen any summary fields for contacts, so it's not pulling anything up. But summary field is based on a numerical field. So that is where annual contract value could be good for choosing it as a summary field. Or if you're selling to companies that have fleets of vehicles, perhaps you want to choose total fleet size as a summary so that you can see in the Chicago area what your total addressable market is for number of vehicles that you could potentially sell to. Things like that. That is what you use a summary field for. And we'll provide a separate video that gets into all the details about filter logic. This is really limitless as far as the filter logic that you can provide. Okay, so there we just completed setting up contacts as a third object here. Now I will go here. Let's close out of these things and refresh the screen, and we should see contacts also pop up there. As a new tab in the bottom. And I have a lot of data, so it's taking a moment to repopulate. And there we go. You can see contacts. That's really how easy it is. And here, first name, last name, account name, title. We don't have anything in department. This is typically, what I do to set it up. I just start throwing things into the bottom panel, see what shows up. If some things are not populated, you can remove that. Sometimes it's easy to forget which fields are populated, especially when you have fields that have similar names. We don't have lead source populated. This is all fake data, by the way. So we did choose certain data. We populated certain data for certain things to communicate. Now, something else to think about when you are setting up this bottom panel. Typically, you might think that if your users are using ProsperVue to make phone calls, you might not want email down here. But there's another use case for ProsperVue where you can export to CSV. Now, if you want to allow your users to export records to CSV, you don't have to allow them. That is something over here. You can toggle that off for your profile group. I have it enabled, but just by toggling back and forth, you can easily disable it, and that capability will disappear from this toolbar. But if it is enabled, you can export all the records that show up on the screen or in a geofence, and all the fields that show up in the bottom panel will be exported to a CSV file. So note I said all the fields in the bottom panel will be exported to a CSV file. So if you do use this export to CSV feature, think about what fields you're going to need for the purpose for exporting. So say, for example, we have many customers who are using an email system that is not tightly integrated with Salesforce. So they need to export these emails in order to use those other email systems. So on a daily basis, your users may not need the email as they're working in this bottom panel, but you're going to want to export it to CSV if you're sending emails. So what you can do is tuck that email field way over here on the left side. You don't have to look at it all the time. And again, to show you where you do that, you select email here in the select field section and leave it here at the bottom of the list. That way you don't have to look at it all the time, but when your users export to CSV, they are also exporting their email field. So I hope this has been useful to show how easily you can configure an object. And again, you can use standard objects, you can choose a custom object, and you can set up to 5 objects here in these bottom tabs in ProsperVue.